if you're a leader and something happens like this that's not scripted out, not planned out, we have leaders that are really good if things are scripted out for them and they can read off a fucking teleprompter. We don't have leaders that when something happens, they can pick up a phone and say, hey, put all of our resources to use. I want helicopters in the air. I want our men and women of the military out there doing what we can to save as many people as possible. What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Vacation Rental Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Moore. We're back with Whiskey Wednesday episode with Mr. Dave Savolich. What's up, brother?
How you doing, man?
Ready to record this one?
Heck yes, man. We're always ready. I love these.
We better remind people. I keep forgetting to remind people what Whiskey Wednesdays is for some of our new listeners. And so Whiskey Wednesdays is short, sweet, to the point episodes where we're going to dive into some things going on in our world, possibly if we have anything going on. Dave is the producer of these, so I don't know exactly what we're talking about. We're always going to talk about something going on in the short-term rental world, as well as questions that you guys send in. So you can always send in questions to support@vodacy.com. Dave will get those, and we'll answer them on an upcoming episode. So let's dive in. What do we got today, brother?
First of all, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to production school to produce these films, so don't be too...
don't be too harsh on the
Don't be too harsh on the producer.
producer.
Yeah, this is all from the hip. You know what I mean?
Hey,
we do a lot of things from the hip around here, and I like that. So.
I like that too.
So, yeah.
Most of our listeners and audience, they like that.
Yeah. Too. So we're going to talk about a little topic here, and I know you're going to want to spend a couple seconds on a little bit of a rant, which is okay. I'm going to allow you to do that as a producer.
Okay.
But the reason why we're bringing this up is to be prepared, be more prepared as short-term rental owners. But as all of us know, we've had some pretty significant devastation from the Hurricane Helene on the East Coast, and we had a lot of members affected. We had a lot of homes. It's very serious, and obviously we can do some things as homeowners and short-term rental owners to be more prepared. So I want to talk a little bit about what we have done as a Vodacy community. To kind of help our members and kind of some actions that we take. That's one of the great things about being part of a community and part of a family, and we take it very serious as a Vodacy family. When there are those who are in need, if we can help them, there's not a lot we can do, but there is some things we can do to help. We're not in the area. We're in Utah there on the East Coast, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, but what we did do is we have a lot of resources that we can help from an educational and information perspective. I know you kind of all hands on deck a couple of days after the storm hit. We jumped in and had a kind of, a Zoom conference call with all of our members who were affected that wanted to be on this call. Mm-hmm. We had a construction expert. We had a kind of a rehab expert. We had our proper insurance expert on there to kind of help. More than anything, just make sure that our members and everybody knew that we were here to support them and just give them some direction and kind of some strategy on what the next steps are, maybe some things that they can do. And maybe we can talk about some of those things as we are still in the hurricane season and not necessarily hopefully this year, but maybe in years to come, that we're prepared as homeowners to do the best we can in these type of situations.
Yeah, this has been a tough one because there's a lot of people that were affected that are not normally affected like this by a hurricane, right? They were very far inland. They were up in the western North Carolina mountains, the Appalachian Mountains, and not typically carrying flood insurance, wind insurance. And so the unfortunate situation for a lot of people in this one is they're significantly affected, and a lot of times, in a lot of these cases, unfortunately, the insurance isn't going to pick up the bill, right? A lot of times when you hear about these insurance or these hurricanes come in, the insurances are in place, and that's your first line of defense is having a really good, solid insurance plan. Well, you might have a really good, solid insurance plan in place in this area specifically, and it's not picking up the bill. Right. And so it's been a really sad and frustrating situation, and a lot of people are wondering what to do, which is why we tried to, we jump in. I was making phone calls Saturday, Sunday, getting some experts lined up of how can we navigate this? How can we clean it up? How do we move forward? How do we, what can we do with our specific properties, whether we're affected or whether our area is affected? And we can talk a lot about that. The rant you're probably assuming I'm going to go off on is the one I went off on earlier, which is the actual response from our government to a disaster like this. And it is super disappointing. And I'll say it over and over and over again. We're about a week removed from the hurricane as we're recording this, and it's really pathetic that we have leaders in Washington that don't know how to make a decision and get people out. We have a civilian forces with helicopters and doing rescue missions bigger and better than our government is actually stepping up and doing. And I think that's really unfortunate. There's a lot of U.S. citizens that have, that are in dire need of help, and nobody can get to them. And people are boots on the ground. There's people with chainsaws and trucks, and unfortunately, they're not able to get to them. And it's awesome that they're helping clean up and trying to get to people, but we need helicopters. And you're seeing literally a civilian task force of helicopters and people that have these resources, and you're seeing, one or two Blackhawks in the air, and you see 40 to 60 civilian helicopters rescuing people.
Right.
And I think it's absolutely ridiculous, because first and foremost, when we have something like this, the rental income and everything else and putting things back together is secondary to helping people get out of these situations safely. And I've just been, we've been kind of all hands on deck trying to figure out what we do with our investments. But, again, that's a distant second to helping these people that really need to be saved.
Right.
And they're 30, 40, 50 miles into the mountains, and the only way you're getting them out is helicopters. And you've got these civilians that are on their own dime, on their own time, using their own resources, rescuing people. And we've got government officials that can't make a damn decision, and they can't make a phone call to deploy the finest men and women in the universe that are U.S. military,
Right.
wanting to go do that. And they can't just jump in the Blackhawks. They can't just go jump in the helicopters and go save people without orders. And we literally have leadership that is not making those orders, which I think is absolutely disgusting. And so, my rant is vote accordingly and call your politicians and say, hey, listen, this is unacceptable. You need to do better. We expect better. And the fact that we can deploy individual civilian,
Right.
citizens
within a couple days,
the minute the storm clears, they're out there saving people. And we can't deploy a government. But we have no problem sending hundreds of billions of dollars overseas, hundreds of billions of dollars to illegal immigrants and everything else in this country. And we can't help our own citizens. And so now the good side of this is you're seeing U.S. citizens, civilians band together, and the grit and determination, the resources they have, and they're saying, hey, the heck with it. We're going to go out and help. And wherever you can help, you want to help. There's going to be the first help is trying to rescue people, right? You want to get people out of these situations that are literally stranded and without resources that they need to survive. And so however we can help there, and there are a number of, amazing people, like hundreds and probably thousands of people that we don't even know about that are trying to help with that, while our government is sitting on their hands and saying, I don't know what we can do. And because we don't have true leaders like that's what this is coming down to, in my opinion. I don't care what way you vote. If you're a leader and something happens like this that's not scripted out, not planned out, we have leaders that are really good if things are scripted out for them and they can read off a fucking teleprompter. We don't have leaders that when something happens, they can pick up a phone and say, hey, put all of our resources to use. I want helicopters in the air. I want our men and women of the military out there doing what we can to save as many people as possible in the aftermath of a storm like this. And you have hours to do that.
You got a small window.
You've got a small window to do that. And we completely failed on that. And I think that it's unacceptable. First thing I would do, and I've already done it, is call politicians, write emails, write letters, and say, this is really disappointing that this is what we've got on the leadership side. Secondly, there is going to be a long cleanup phase, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be trying to help. There's also going to be a lot of people that are trying to benefit off of this, the storm chasers, the people that are like, hey, I put together a GoFundMe account for, to help the victims. There's probably some really good ones out there. There's probably some, and there will be some that are complete frauds and they're not doing it. So I know if you do want to help, do some due diligence on where your dollars, where your time can go to help these people put these things back together. These towns get put back together. There's a lot of towns that are literally just out, like Chimney Rock and Asheville. It's like, man, they're literally almost gone, right? And it's a really sad situation to see. Then we start to say, okay, I've got a property that survived. What can we do? How can we mitigate our losses? How can we help in the situation on the cleanup? And it's going to be a long process, and there's not always the right answers. It's taken some immediate actions of, if you do have a property there and you're able to get to it, shut the power off if it's not safe, get some people there to start cleaning things up. And that's the phase we're in right now. And it's overwhelming for a lot of people because they don't have insurance in many cases. Right. Or they have insurance, their insurance isn't covering it, because most people don't realize their insurance doesn't cover flood if they don't have flood insurance. And a lot of people, the wind damage, if it was from a hurricane, is not covered unless you have wind insurance. And so now it's being able to emotionally figure out, how do I move one step at a time forward to be able to handle this and do this. And in our world where we invest into vacation rentals, and we've got a lot of our members who have properties there, your target audience might change for a while. They're probably not vacationers. They're probably contractors coming in. They're probably, families that were displaced that need a place to stay. Maybe you go to more of a midterm rental, long-term rental for some of those families. You can still say short-term rental, possibly with the contractors coming in and putting things back together. There's going to be a market. It's going to be different, right? And so, and that's, like I said, is a distant second to what I feel like we failed as a government to help save these people that were in dire need. And my hat goes off to the people who are literally taking their own helicopters, putting their own lives on the line to go help these people. And they're like, I don't care what they're telling me I can or can't do. I'm getting in the air and we're going and helping.
Yeah. And money too. They're spending their own money to do this.
Not asking for anything.
And really diving in and supporting and helping these folks.
By the way, we're gonna give $700 to everybody affected by this from the government. Oh, thanks. Thanks.
Right.
We appreciate you. You really stepping up.
I'm trying not to laugh.
Nobody cares about the money right now. Right.
Exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to, and we need to step up there too. I pay a lot of money in taxes. You pay a lot of money in taxes. A lot of our listeners pay a lot of money in taxes. And if I had any say of where my tax dollars go, it's to U.S. citizens in need of help, not to all these other bullshit places we send it. And so, I know that people don't listen to this podcast for my political views, and I'm not trying to turn it into that, but it is it is disappointing, and we have to we're sleeping in the bed we made right now. And we have to be careful of the bed we make, because we're going to end up sleeping in it when these types of things happen, and we're going to realize the bed we made when these types of things happen. And the good part about it is, people helping people is what we're all about, and you're seeing that on the ground. And I don't know why the news is not showing more of that as well. I think that is happening more than we realize. And now you mark my words, and it might happen before this podcast airs and people are listening to it. Well, they say they already did that. To date, they're not showing any of that stuff. You watch when they start deploying, the Blackhawks and everything else. And unfortunately, it's too late. They're going to be more on recovery missions than rescue missions. But when they start doing that, then all of a sudden, media is going to start showing that bullshit. And they needed to be out already. That's where it's unacceptable to me. And I think it's important to be a part of a group. Right. I've said this on Monday when we got on our Zoom call with all of our members that are in this situation, because, thankfully, most of our members, we don't know anybody that was hurt or lost a loved one. There's a lot of people, hundreds of people that died in this storm. That's always been the first and foremost, and why I'm so frustrated about this situation. But moving forward, when you lose an asset or you lose the profit driver in the area of why people come in, it can be overwhelming as well, because you worry financially. How am I going to move forward? How am I going to pay the bills on this? Right? We buy these properties as income generating properties. They're not necessarily in our, we don't buy them just because we can, want to have a whole bunch of vacation homes across the world. These are investments. And so now we're navigating, and sometimes navigating all that, there's a way forward. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a long process. And because of that, you're going to have ups and downs emotionally. And I think one of the biggest things that I can tell people is join groups and support groups, and they don't have to cost you money. There's support groups on, that you can find online. And, because if you are at least talking to other people going through it at the same time, they're the only ones that understand what you're going through. And they're going to have good days, when you're having a bad day, and vice versa. You might have a better day when somebody else is having a really crappy day. And so it's having that group of people that you can talk to and how they're navigating it, how they're putting it back together. Sometimes when you know that there's on the surface, it's overwhelming. When you know that you can take one step forward every single day to put it back together, you're going to get through it, and you're going to be probably changed on the other side of it. And what that looks like, maybe you're stronger, you learn a lot, you figure it out. If you did have insurance that you can lean on, and you get going. But at the end of the day, like we always preach, self-reliance, personal responsibility, taking action to really take care of like our own situation, right? And so whatever you can do, not to wait on somebody else. You should have, I'm sure most people that have properties have already called their insurance companies. They probably got on the list to get an adjuster out there, and you want to follow what they're going to do. Document everything, take pictures of everything, right? Most of you have really good photos of your properties already. So you've got a before picture. Take some really good after pictures before and as you're going through the cleanup phase, because you might not have all the answers of who's going to help, where they're going to help, what the government decides to do with FEMA money, all that stuff. And so document everything as you start to put this back together, and the cost and the time that it's going to take, and surround yourself with other people doing it, because this is not one of those situations that is very easy to deal with emotionally. And I think that needs to be, you have to think about that too. And I think that, being a part of a group like we have in Vodacy, luckily we've got, an amazing community, an amazing family that people can lean on. But if you are listening to this and you feel overwhelmed, make sure that you're surrounding yourself with other people in that same situation as well.
Well, and reach out too. I think it's a lot of this uncharted, unknown territory. So you don't know what you don't know. You have a lot of questions. There are a lot of resources, whether it's within the Vodacy community or out there other places, friends, neighbors, people that have gone through this. But reach out. If you're not sure what the insurance covers, let's connect you with an insurance agent. We have experts inside. If you're looking for rehab or construction, things like that, we have a great community that is willing and able. They have a lot of knowledge. They're insightful, and let us help each other kind of get through this.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely. So, and because it's going to be a process, and it's going to be a long process. And so, we're open to, like, if you're not part of our group, email us at support. Let us know where we can help. We want to help people get through this as much as we can, point them in the right direction. Just like you said, there's a lot of resources and places that when you're in the middle of it, it feels overwhelming, and that we can hopefully help point you in the right direction as well. Yeah.
And it's a little bit bittersweet. We are actually going to Charlotte in the next couple of days. By the time this airs, it'll be, just past, but we're excited to meet with our members. Some of them will have been affected, unfortunately. Thank goodness that I believe they're all safe and everybody's doing well. But it will be good to support each other and talk through kind of their situation, and really kind of network and socialize and show them our support. We're not going out there from a social media perspective. This was planned prior to that event, but we're going out there, and obviously this is it worked out to be good timing, and excited to meet with our members and take advantage of that. So for sure.
It happens to be this was one of those. We do meetups every single month. We go somewhere else in the country every month. This was one that was planned, and it is good timing, honestly, for some of these people that were affected by it. And it's nice to have a community, like I said, even you've got communities online, but then we go get together live, right, and give each other hugs and tell each other, it's going to be okay, and help each other through these things, because a lot of them in that area own properties in the Western North Carolina mountains, because that's right in their backyard, and that's where they chose to build and start their portfolios, and many of them were affected. And so we're going to be out there as at a Vodacy meetup. Again, you're exactly right. We're not you won't see us promoting it as a hey, we're going out to really try to use this to gain any followers or anything else. It's really just we're going out to support our Vodacy family.
Yeah, good. Well, let's jump into a question. We have a really good question that came in to our school platform. One of our Vodacy members really kind of asked a question on some advice, and this kind of goes a little bit hand in hand with rebuilding. What about working with a contractor? What are some of the things that you should understand or know or should be able to be aware of as you're working with a contractor. Because we have a lot of members that buy properties. We have some that do some rehab, and then we have some that build. And so there's a little bit of, but everything kind of involved in what's going on out there in with Helene. But here's a couple things that kind of came up, and we had some really good insights. But one is have a contract and not just a bid. So, make sure you understand that, the pricing and understand your budget. Be clear about timelines and possible penalties. Be clear about pulling permits. That's a big one because, that's super important. The city isn't going to allow you to do certain things if you don't have the permits. Be clear about when draws are due, so money owed. Only pay for work that has been done and not going to be done. So that's important. And obviously we've been burned. All of us have been burned maybe at some level. So it's good to kind of rehash some of these ideas and thoughts. Be clear about when the final is due and what amount will be held back until punch list is complete. And then the last one is be sure if you do a cost plus, you set up review of cost to stay on track when you have a draw due. So anything else you can think of, just being, super vigilant on working with the contractor and maybe do some pre-work on the contractor. Right.
Yeah. And I think that all of those things you mentioned really come down to two things. It's clarity, being very clear on what everybody's expected to do and expectations, right? Clarity and expectations, like setting really clear expectations. Everybody understands what's going on. You mentioned something between a contract and a bid. They're two different things. And a lot of people get bids, but it doesn't, a contract is going to hold a contractor to certain pricing and certain deliverables. And in that contract, you need to be really clear. Like you even mentioned, there's a lot of times where in the contract, they give you, you have to read that contract and see what does that include and what are the expectations of both sides, both on payment, both on permits, like who's doing that, who's pulling permits. I've heard a contractor show up and they're like, hey, we're under contract to start this, but you didn't go get the permits. And the homeowner's like, I've never pulled a permit. Why aren't you pulling the permit? It's like, it wasn't in the contract, right? And so really most of the time, and this is going to be harder, and I know this is not when this question came in, so I'm going to answer it a little bit different ways. But when you're building a house and you're building a short-term rental, or you're doing a rehab, or you bought a value-add property, most of these properties are not in our backyard. And so it gets really hard to manage the work and the contractor, if you will. And so you really need to do some due diligence on that contractor, do some due diligence on finding references, talking to their references, looking at the work that they performed, and taking some time to do that. It's so often that we hear, hey, I hired this contractor, everything looked good on the contract, the bid looked good, and yet the work is not getting done, and timelines are blown, budgets are blown, nobody's showing up, and I found out that we missed our timeline cut, and I've been paying because I thought we were doing. Nobody's watching over the job is what my point, right? And so because nobody's there, and so talk to the people who've hired those contractors and see now in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene is you're going to have a lot of contractors that aren't even local. And there's going to be some good ones and some really bad ones. Those storm chasers that are trying to get you to sign over your insurance claim to them, don't ever sign over your policy to any contractor ever. But even if your insurance isn't covering it, really, like, sometimes we feel in these desperate situations, I've got to get somebody working on it. They're the only person, everybody's so busy, they're the only person that can get in. That's not an excuse to not do your due diligence, not ask these exact same questions. And so when you're working with contractors, there's always really good ones. Just like any industry, there's good ones, there's bad ones. And it's our job to do our due diligence, to put ourselves in the best position to get the best ones that can help us reach our end goals on budget, on time. And whether that's I'm going to do a brand new build somewhere outside of my backyard, right? Or a rehab on a vacation rental that's across the country, or I've got one that was damaged and we need to get it put back together, right? And the latter is one of the hardest things to do because everybody's in the same spot. Everybody's overwhelmed. Everybody's busy. Like any contractor that shows up probably has work, and that doesn't always mean that the right one that shows up that you're talking to first that can get you in is the right contractor. And you got to really do some due diligence, especially on some of those out-of-town contractors coming in.
Good. Yeah, no, great insight. Good advice. And obviously today's subject, a little sensitive, but very well said. It's a, it's about helping other people. It's about self-reliance, like you said, and really diving in to support those who are in need. And, we take that same approach with our Vodacy family. We appreciate you guys listening. Again, send in questions to support@vodacy.com. Let us know kind of your thinking. We want to make sure that they're answered on this podcast. And more than anything, we appreciate your attendance and watching this, and kind of we love what we do, and we'll keep doing it. So let's wrap up.
Okay, let's wrap up. And like Dave said, we know how valuable your guys' time is. We do appreciate you spending it with us. At the end of the episodes, I ask you 2 favors. First one is, if you like the show, share it. Those things help us grow. If you know somebody else who would like to be a part of these conversations, sharing that show is a big thank you to us for doing it and putting it on. We appreciate that. We realize when you guys do that. And then if you have more than 30 seconds, like, review it on whatever platform you're watching or listening on. And the final, most important thing that you can do today to start picking that one thing you can do today to start building that life you don't want to take a vacation from. Cheers, my friends.
Cheers, buddy.